I don't get it. Seems like Mr. Gutierrez is in good company up there. The Department of Labor came out the other day and said, we need to fix our broken immigration system to encourage more highly educated foreign-born workers to come to the United States. If we are to compete in a global economy, we must continue to attract and retain the world's brightest minds. I thought we had those right here, Mr. Liu. This was Deputy Secretary of Labor Chris Liu. He works for the U.S. Department of Labor. I want you to hear his statement again, and then I'm going to read you his mission statement for his agency. We also need to fix our broken immigration system to encourage more highly educated foreign-born workers to come to the United States. If we are to compete in a global economy, we must continue to attract and retain the world's brightest minds. Too many foreign students, many from Asian countries, come to the United States to further their education, but most return home when they cannot obtain a green card or immigrant visa. As part of President Obama's immigration reform, he has called for stapling green cards directly to the diplomas of foreign students engaged in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. Sounds right? Except for one problem. The mission statement of the U.S. Department of Labor reads as follows: to foster, promote, and develop. I'm going to read it a couple of times because I really want you to get this. To foster, promote, and develop the welfare of wage earners, job seekers, and retirees of the United States. Improve working conditions, advance opportunities for profitable employment, and assure work-related benefits and rights. All right. Anyone who understands sentence construction understands that the core concept of this statement is to promote and foster and develop the welfare of wage earners, job seekers, and retirees of the United States. Not Mexico, not Asia, not China, not Russia, not Thailand, not Bangkok, not Hong Kong, not Mexico, not Honduras, not Argentina, not Brazil, not Iceland, not France, Britain, England, Lithuania. So the next obvious question is, whose side is Mr. Liu on? 50 million Americans don't have jobs. 50 million. There's only 150 million in the workforce. 1/3 of us are out of work. And Mr. Liu, you're complaining to us about foreign students who can't get a green card? The only global economy is apparently one in your mind, you knuckle-headed piece of human excrement. Meanwhile, at the VA, patients are committing suicide as they sit on the wait list, knowing that they're dying and they can't get help. They're dying of physical and mental ailments, which they cannot gain assistance and help for because they're prohibited from going to a general medical hospital that a non-civilian or non-veteran would go to. Dr. Margaret Moxness, she was employed in Huntington, Virginia's medical center in Charleston from 2008 to 2010. She's a psychiatrist. She lost touch with patients and claims that they were compassionless. The VA administrators lost touch with the patients. They don't really experience what the doctors and nurses are experiencing, which is the suffering and the pain and the death. She says that when she complained to her supervisors, it was harmful to avoid or only offer partial treatment to these people, that she was functionally silenced, and they cut her out. Her story is not unusual. Rush Limbaugh came out yesterday and said, you must make it clear. The Veterans Hospital Death Panel is a preview of life under Obamacare. And I have no doubt. Because the truth is that what we see right now is a panel that punishes whistleblowers, a panel that will not allow patients to be seen. The average doctor, the average orthopedist, the average surgeon sees more patients in one day than a VA doctor sees in more than a week. Do you know why? Because a doctor in private practice has an obligation to earn enough money to pay the bills. But a doctor who works for the Veterans Administration, they're on a salary. Now, they're going to try and tell us that, well, we made sure that we had so-and-so resign. Petzel is his name. He was due to resign this month. Retire. And they put him on administrative leave with pay. Somewhere upwards of 100 Americans that we now know about are dead. Patients who died of colon cancer while waiting for a doctor to say, come on in and let's take a look at you. The Project on Government Oversight, also known as POGO, and the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, that's IFVA, they have recently unveiled an encrypted web submission form that can be sent to them by whistleblowers, because the truth is that the panels at the VA are notorious for punishing and persecuting whistleblowers. Notorious. Joe Newman, the director of communications for POGO, says the groups are looking for systematic problems, and they've received already, as of Monday morning, 310 submissions. The majority of the reports are thus far from veterans and members of the public, and less than 10% are from employees. But they did get something less than 10% from VA employees. According to three legal experts, if there is such a thing, blowing the whistle with the help of interested nonprofits is perfectly legal. All three of these attorneys specialize in whistleblowing law. This is an article in U.S. News and Report, or usnews.com. And using a third party to snitch on bad behavior may be well worth considering. In short, VA employees can still be protected if they go to nonprofits or the press rather than the agency itself. This is particularly so when there has been a pattern of unresponsiveness. Now, Steve Cohen, that was Cornell law professor Stuart Schwab. Stephen Cohn, the executive director of the National Whistleblower Center, knows the risks of internal reporting. He's representing a surgeon who blew the whistle on shocking safety violations at a VA hospital in Dallas 2 years ago. The surgeon wrote a detailed memo to superiors noting that colleagues nearly had him remove the wrong kidney, and that they had another instance where they presented a guy for surgery who was too senile to provide the informed consent. But he was the one who was fired. even after an admission of the errors from the doctor's boss himself. They admitted their mistake, but they fired him anyway. Is that any way to treat the righteous guy who comes forth? See, here's the problem, and here's what I would like to suggest and recommend. And I'll do a little bit more homework and see if I can't try to figure out how we can get a hold of these attorneys. But what I'd like to suggest is that along the lines of the ombudsman, the civilian ombudsman program, if you recall, I talked about that before. And what the civilian ombudsman program is essentially this. We place individuals inside of every federal agency, every federal department, every federal bathroom, if need be, who has 100% full authority to investigate anything and everyone within that group or agency or department. And, moreover, they're not paid by government and they owe no allegiance to government, and they report directly back to us, the citizenry, via a website on a routine basis. Maybe it's quarterly or monthly or whatever the case may be. And there, what we now do is make sure that this Drudge Report-like website that just has headlines on it and a report. So-and-so, the civilian ombudsman for the Department of the Interior, or the guy from the USDA, or another guy from the Department of the Navy, or another guy from the ATF, or another guy from the EPA. They found the following problems and bulletized them. Let the press then take that information and do their job as investigative, dare I say the word, investigative journalists. Now they've got the lead, the hot one. Wouldn't it be wonderful if a civilian ombudsman put out there in the newspaper or put out there on the ombudsman website that turns out that he's found out the head of the EPA is using private email outside of the federal government's email system in an attempt to try to hide her activities and behavior? Wouldn't it be nice to know that a civilian ombudsman could say, the following VA hospital has been playing games with the waiting lists, and we've got patients that have been waiting for months and are dying of cancer because they can't get a meeting with their doctor. And here's the name of the VA clinic. And the following morning, the doctors and the administrators would show up, and there would be 200 members of the press there with microphones saying, please, sir, explain to us what's going on here at the VA. The ombudsman gave us the news. Please, sir, tell us how many patients have died. Who's responsible? Who signed off? Where's the paperwork? I filed the Freedom of Information Act this morning. The press would have no reason to go forth and say, we didn't know about that. Americans would be better off knowing that somebody was watching out for our interest. And I would represent that the ombudsman program would answer the question. Quis custodiet ipsos custodes. Who will watch the watchers? Now I'd like to recommend and suggest that POGO and the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America show us how to create a web submission form. Let's create a not-for-profit organization for every federal agency. EPAWatchdog.org. USDA Watchdog.org. Department of the Interior, watchdog.org. Put up a web submission form, and let's let the whistleblowers begin to give us the inside story. That, combined with a special civilian ombudsman, not responsible or reporting back to any government agency, not reporting to Congress, not getting paid by the government that it's supposed to be watching out for, and a collective group who will then make sure that they are watching out for each other and holding each other accountable. What do you mean, Sam? I'm a member of this 4-panel group that watches over the EPA, and don't tell me that you didn't know about this because I just found an email from you. You're supposed to be a watchdog. You're out of the ombudsman program. They should be retirees. Why not? Why not? Because they don't have career goals. That's why. Their expenses should be paid, and they should be paid a very nominal amount of money by a not-for-profit organization that will enable them to get in there with a shovel and dig through the mountains of excrement to find out who's doing the dirty and then expose them publicly. Liability, you say? Well, wait a minute. Stop right there. Then let's set a rule that says, like the House floor and the Senate floor, you can say anything you want about anyone in public service, and you cannot be held liable or slanderous for it. Isn't that how Harry Reid got out there and told us that Mitt Romney hadn't paid his taxes, and a little bird had landed on Harry's shoulder and told him so? It all turned out to be lies later. But Harry couldn't be held accountable because, well, he was on the Senate floor when he said it. Obama knew back in 2008 that there was a problem. This started under Bush, who was also a traitor, cut his own country's throat, betrayed his own veterans, that he stood there and said he did this and that, and he was such a great guy. It started with him. Obama came in 2008 and swore he was going to fix it. He swore he would. He addressed the issue himself. So how is it now? He turns around and says, I read about it in the papers like you. By the way, this has got to be the most uninformed president that we've ever had. You know, here's the problem, folks. Somebody wrote on our Facebook page the other day, Rob Robinson said this, and we were talking about the Jay Carney lies about the scandal of not knowing about the VA administration and what was happening. And he said, I can already see a minimum of a 1-week lag between when a story breaks on the internet and when mainstream media, the Ministry of Propaganda, reports it for the first time. Sometimes it's as much as 2 weeks. Now here comes Jay Carnival Carney, who tries to tell us that it took a story on lamestream media for government to know that corruption was going on at a relatively low level. Read with lots of people and increasingly higher levels of authority between the level it was happening at and the president, including the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, whom, interestingly enough, sustained a foot injury in the Vietnam War. He goes on to say, I wonder if that's code for intentionally shot himself in the foot, because the way he's running the VA displays a high level of expertise in doing just that. I mean, let's face it, folks. Aren't supervisors, assistant managers, assistant section chiefs, assistant directors, and directors supposed to be continuously, directly managing their people to make sure they're doing their jobs and not slacking, stealing, or abusing privileges? Isn't each level of authority supposed to be responsible for the actions or misactions, as the case may be, of their subordinates? Isn't that why they're in a position of trust in the first place? Seems to me that if you agree with any of that, then you have to agree that the entire VA infrastructure is seriously contaminated at a systemic level. Excuse me. The president had to notice a problem? Really? Where were all the people in between the hospital and POTUS, whose specific job is, or should be, to identify problems before they get noticed by a news station, much less the President of the United States, weeks later at that? How can this not be viewed as willful and intentional? Let's also not forget that Shinseki was the 34th United States Chief of Staff, a position he held for not less than 4 years, after his 1 year as Deputy ACS, which was probably spent grooming him for the ACS position. This on top of dozens of commands in the Army, all considered stepping stone assignments, not to mention overall command of SOFOR in Bosnia-Herzegovina, which was apparently now called a war. With a history like that, you'd expect a man to know how to keep a large, spread-out command functioning efficiently to go to war. Yet he can't even manage a civilian-based, veteran-staffed, essentially private-run corporation under no threat of Title X activation. And now, apparently, the President of the United States has to do Mr. Shinseki's job. And yet, Shinseki still has his job. See, the truth of the matter is, America, we've reached the point, and we're well over it, of no return. I did post an article up there about rogue government prepares for a heated conflict as historical cycles point to a coming clash. And the image up there is the Tyranny Bunch on a play off of the old Brady Bunch. I encourage you to read it. The article is worth the read. It offers a historical look at the self-destructive discord that happens when governments lose control of their own creations. And in our case, the Frankenstein monster has certainly escaped from the castle, and it's wreaking havoc, raping and pillaging the village. But you see, in their attempt to cover up their guilt and their malfeasance for creating the monster in the first place, and feeding it and caring for it in some misguided, I don't even understand what the thought process it was for that. Governments usually then compound the problem by causing more damage than the monster, all in their attempt to cover it up. And guess who pays? The villagers, every single time without fail. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, the Obamacare new rules that bail out the insurance companies. Here we go again. You know, if it ain't one thing, it's another with this administration. But I got to tell you, we've gone so far down the road here of tyranny that it's time for Americans to stand up and say we've had enough. By the way, for the record, before you get too crazy, this HIPAA release form, which I obtained yesterday by I took someone to the doctor's office, and they were asked to sign this HIPAA form, which has now become a 5-page diatribe. And we're going to go over it in depth when I get a couple more of them, because you're waiving your rights, including for investigation, which is all a direct result of Obamacare. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, by the way, a question for you guys, or a point for you guys. Yesterday, AmericanResumeService.com, that's AmericanResumeService.com, came out and said, at my appeal for corporations to donate a product or a service that they offer, they've agreed to offer their $200 resume creation package for anyone that so chooses. They'll charge you $100, and 100% of that donation will go to America's Voice Now. The website is AmericanResumeService.com. And I will strongly encourage you to participate in that. By the way, I happen to have seen a number of the resumes that have come off of that service, and they are absolutely outstanding. So, if you are in need of a resume or a resume rewrite and a tune-up, for $100 for a $200 package, of which they're going to donate the whole $100 to AVN, you can get your problem solved. AmericanResumeService.com. Please make sure that you visit that website. There's phone numbers there as well. Visit our friends over at batterystation.com and make sure that you work with them. AtlasSurvivalShelters.com, SurvivalByPreparedness.com. We'll be back in just a moment.